You are seen, you are loved, and you are heard. It's time for On Purpose with Purpose with Evie Hanover.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the On Purpose with Purpose podcast. My name is Evie, and today we have such an incredible episode lined up for you. Today I'm joined with Joe Kim, who is an entrepreneur and avid traveler. So welcome onto the podcast.
Thank you, Evie. I appreciate it. It's such an honor.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. So I like to open up just asking people what their testimony is and what their story is. So if you would like to kind of tell yours.
Wow. So it is, we call it a very interesting story because we all have a story that's yet to been told and it's a work in progress. But the journey has been very, very, I could say from a book that was not supposed to be released. If you could refer to a book called Outwitting the Devil, and it's by Napoleon Hill. He had wrote the book with the intentions of reaching everybody, but to spread God's word, to spread the message of faith. And the biggest key word of my faith testimony is the word called drifting. And so I know that the enemy likes to use two very, very popular weapons that is very prevalent today, which is discouragement, which you can see that everywhere, but then distraction or drifting. So I started off as one of those, let's just sprinkle some water and you're saved, you're good to go. Going through a crazy life of just drifting. And it's not, for me, it was do these little things. It's the works. It's the letting people cross the street, opening doors for people, and just being a kid who just had that wild side in him, who just wanted to be free. So drifting through, I was considered a Christian from 2004, so about 21 years. I could be labeled as such. Then went through the whole traditional route of going to school, getting kicked out of school, eventually getting my college degree at some point, which I may actually explain later. Mm-hmm. But then going into an adventure of traveling and just running away as fast as I can, away from my responsibilities, away from my purpose. And then there was a tragic, it seems like a tragic accident that happened approximately 4.5 years ago. So the drifting for me eventually would end because if I had my faith in something, a source or something had to intervene and hit me like, here are you driving on the highway of life and you run into a wall. Not incidentally, but you hit the wall at about 200 miles an hour spiritually. And so getting from that point, experiencing something that it's unexplainable to anybody who I would have coffee with or I would just go play basketball, say, hey, I just had this happen. And it just didn't resonate to a lot of folks because it just seemed like it was too outrageous for that to happen. But then that moment, and if you want, we could go into the story a little bit more in depth about this catalyst that caused a change in my faith journey. Had to go into the wilderness, meaning away from what was familiar, and then I had to reclaim my faith and accept the Lord Jesus as my Savior. So, but there's a lot of things in between that led to this point, and even a lot of connections that guided me out of that point of darkness, because drifting seems like as the light dims, it dims and dims, and then just like how do you cook a frog? You don't just put it in boiling water. You just warm the water 1 degree each time, and that's what happens when I drifted away. And to come back, I could, instead of just drifting back to the point of faith, to having God as my center, I could beeline back. And since if I took the wrong turn, I could U-turn legally, of course, and then go 100 miles an hour to catch up for lost time. So it was, let me talk to God once in a while, because I drifted so much. I said, okay, well, because I can get away with certain things, I don't need to talk to him. He was more of like the first aid kit in the trunk of your car where you could need it, but you never needed it. But then there was another story down the road, if we get a chance to tell, that I had to use it. I said, wow, okay, I didn't think I would ever use it. So I used him as a 911 call, and I knew he wouldn't answer. And so to the point where I didn't have to come to him with a 911. It's more of a 101 type of call where I can learn from him. Like, he just wants to hear from me. So there's a lot of events that led to that. So, but that's been pretty much, in a nutshell, what my testimony has been.
Yeah, and I love the analogy of having the first aid kit in the back of your car, because I think a lot of us kind of have God at the back of our mind, knowing that if we need him, we'll call on to him. But if not, like, he's still there, you know? I would love for you to go a little bit deeper into your testimony and kind of what happened, because I feel like that's a really big and important part of your story.
So, absolutely, Evie. I grew up in a high-pressured family. Being in a Korean household, they expected the eldest, of course, to perform the best, to set the example for the youngest, because I am the youngest of two kids. So I have an older brother who now lives here in Georgia, used to live in California. But the trouble really began when my parents created a lot of tension, but it wasn't because of them. There was a lot of outside pressure that causes. So my parents had divorced early on when I was 9 years old. So a long time ago, actually. But I remember the fights that they went through. So trauma, you collect that, and you'll never really forget that. Then it became, how sinful could I get being a parent, because my kids won't remember it? And to see the things I saw on a fuzzy TV, because now we don't have fuzzy TV where we have to adjust an antenna, but that's how it was. And turn the dial just enough, and you see somebody's body there, and you see some actions there, and you see certain things that they picked up and either smoked or injected, and my parents actually enjoyed that. And so to go from that point to experience, if you've ever experienced a near death, so they call them NDEs. I experienced my first one before my parents had filed a divorce. I actually drowned not once but twice in Augusta. That's where I was born and raised. So that was the several that I had experienced, and then had a car accident, and also fell from a travel trip. So it were these events that happened. But then the biggest, I'd say the biggest or the most important catalyst happened in 2021. So 2/17/21, everything had built up finally. It was the cries for help, to cry for God, to cry for those who lived in sin, who I thought made me feel better. So it was the morning of, I was running a research company during the time of COVID and during the lockdowns. It was about the time when the vaccine was released. And so I was working in that program, working with nurses, working with the big medical associations, some that weren't even listed, because some of the vaccines were released by certain organizations, but there were others involved that backed out. So working that, it was a very high pressure situation. And then at 4:46 p.m., I clearly remember looking at the time and said, okay, time to throw the trash out. Now, a little caveat with this, I also own currently in my trunk in my car a one-wheeled skateboard called the One Wheel. It's a wheel in the middle, weighs about 35 pounds. Probably still can't take it to the airport, but that's okay. Tried it once and we made it through. So the way that the board works is, if you have to keep it level like a surfboard or like a wave board or whatever, you just got to keep it flat, but it starts off in an angle. It's kind of like kickstand up, and you have to balance it to let it roll. And if you lean too far forward, you can go fast, but it'll create this little default mechanism where it'll slow you down, and then eventually it says, okay, I'm going to just throw you off, and it'll just throw you off. So fast forward back to 4:46, my board was turned on. It's green light. I said, okay. And before that, there was a tornado that hit, and I was in Charleston, South Carolina. I was living in North Charleston. I was about to actually live there around West Ashley. But the research was done at the Seacoast. I think it was called the Seacoast Church. It was a non-denominational church over in Mount Pleasant. And I just remember the smell of the paper mill. It doesn't smell pleasant. It's just like when you go through Savannah, Georgia, there's a paper mill that I think is closed finally, but you could smell it through Interstate 95. So we had to clean up some mess, and we didn't want to have a vandalized looking property for the church because they had service the next. It was, I believe, a Tuesday. I believe that was a Tuesday. So we didn't want to leave the clutter on the trees or tents in places. The generators flew out. I don't know how that all happened. And then at 4:46, I blacked out. I didn't fall to the ground. I didn't feel anything. The latter part, when I actually opened my eyes, it was 10:46 p.m. It was 6 hours later, and I had anything you can imagine from a bruised face to scratches, or actually road rash. It's where your skin, and then broken bones. The skull was broken. Nothing in the skin broke, but I could tell my head shape wasn't really the normal egg-shaped head that I would have. It was a pretty odd shape, so I clearly, obviously, broke my skull. So I didn't know what happened there, but during that time, if you ever recall near-death experiences, if anybody's ever told you stories, either an out-of-body experience and they would see their body, they would see their family crying at the hospital and all those things, and others would not really see anything. Well, I was that one that didn't see anything, except I was on the ground in the outer body moment, but then I got up. But it was like I fell down face first. So that was actually what happened. So there was only one nurse that saw the whole thing, because there's an area of the research site where you can smoke. But these are temporary sites where there were tents, retractable tents, things like that, and banners and things like that. So you'd smoke in the back, and then people that would hand their samples, their DNA samples, would be out in the front or in the opposite direction. So she was smoking and saw me carrying 2 bags of trash full of tents and a bunch of heavy things. I went too fast, and as I explained earlier with the one wheel, it shook, and think of it like a seesaw. I was on the bottom part of the seesaw, and it flung off at about 20 miles an hour straight into the edge of a sidewalk.
Oh my gosh.
And so that's where the injury had happened, but I was already out before then. I was out before I even got on this one wheel, and a nurse saw the whole thing, almost swallowed her cigarette. I think she did, and she probably wouldn't admit it, and screamed. It was like a horrible scream, but I didn't hear any of that. What I heard, and I'll kind of go back and forth with what I was told that I experienced, and then what I went through. And it was a very simple one. I just literally looked like I was walking down a hall. And I could tell that it was completely pitch black and dark. And I noticed I knew there were doors, but I just kept walking forward because I kept hearing a voice. It was an intimidating, kind of a dark, deep, but a soothing voice. And I just kept walking. And I kept hearing things of, "It's time to come home, son. It is time to be home with your father. Well done, good and faithful." When I hear that, because I remember hearing "well done, good and faithful servant," that's usually said at eulogies or just giving honor to someone who just passed. And I didn't want to hear that, because then as I continue walking down the hall, I saw one of those spotlights in this one spot. And I said, okay, I think it's time for me to really go. Now, I haven't hit my 40s yet. I thought, okay, I was going to live longer than my parents. And so I just kept walking. So during that process, I had obtained, I think it was a major concussion. It was almost levels of CTE. Because I hit the sidewalk so hard, it kind of caused a shatter effect. Not to my skull, because I probably wouldn't have recovered from that, but my brain seems to be scrambled. And they called the ambulance, came in, administered the concussion test, where it's just follow my finger with your eyes. I somehow passed it.
Right, which is what? Like, what?
It's okay. Well, I thought one eye would have just started spinning in a circle while the other one's looking back and forth. It's like, okay, you might be a visitor or might be an alien or something, but both, are you sure both my eyes? And then I just cracked jokes with them. What was odd is because I try to reach out, but this nurse actually recalled everything and said, you sounded normal. It just, on the outside, looked like you were on set. You had 3D makeup and it just looked like you were almost dead. But then I went unconscious. So then I had to get resuscitated. Then they had to rush me to the hospital. Had to get resuscitated. I think it was 4 times. Through the whole process, the nurse was just in tears. She told me that if I was like one of your own children, it was a pretty scary moment for them. The other nurses, they had to continue with their work, with research. I told them that under any circumstances, just work. If any emergencies happen, we just need one nurse to go. And then through the hospital, had to get resuscitated a few times. And I somehow magically discharged myself from the hospital because I was a little feisty. I'm kind of a fighter as it is. And I said, I'm completely fine. They gave me a tetanus shot because they thought I had been exposed to like rust, some kind of rust, but it was a concrete sidewalk. So, which was odd because a year after that, in 2022, I revisited the site and there's still the blood stains that were on the sidewalk. I said, I'm surprised it's still there, but it was good that the nurse that told me the story, I will not tell the story again, and please do not contact me again because it's such a traumatic experience from somebody from the outside to see something very, very tragic. I just discharged myself from the hospital. I issued an Uber. The backstory behind that, I was able to find the Uber driver to call him to act like I lost something because when I woke up, I had to go through all my messages. I had sent messages. I had countless phone calls, and I had to call everybody back to say I apologize. I didn't know what I said to you. Hopefully it wasn't offensive. Called the Uber driver that I reached, and I said, I apologize. I don't think I was in the right mind. Was I okay? It's like, no, you helped me because I was about to end my life. After that ride, I was going to drive off the bridge. And so we haven't stayed in touch since. It was just the passerby type of situation. So to go back and reverse from all that, when I stepped into the spotlight, now in my out-of-body moment, I said, okay, I'm ready to go. And then I thought I was going to be elevated to go to heaven. But then it was more of that, no, you're getting sucked back through a mirror back to reality. But I opened my eyes, said, okay, something happened. Because I didn't know I ate dinner. I didn't know I took a shower. Didn't know I even changed out of the clothes that I looked at. And I threw the clothes away, but I had ripped up. It was pretty much a mess. It looked like I got tossed around like a tornado. And everything just kind of ripped holes and everything through my clothes. So it's still to this day unexplainable. I've gone to countless people to get an explanation. Was it my brain that created this story? But I was at peace when I went through the whole situation because I didn't feel the pain. I didn't hear out the cries. I didn't of anyone that cared. I was actually content. I wasn't excited. I wasn't mad. I wasn't depressed. I was pretty content. I said, okay, do I wander aimlessly after this? Or am I now primed for my purpose? I didn't ask those questions for about 3 or 4 months, but miraculously, through that accident of several fractures and went to a brain scan physician, went to 2 of them, and that's when I realized and confirmed the miracle that it would take someone who's experienced a traumatic brain injury years or even the rest of their life. Some may never recover from it, but I had recovered from it in less than 3 months.
Wow.
The skull healed in less than a week and a half. It's just quick healing, but what they notice is you either have a good central faith, like a faith life, either you also probably do these words of affirmation because you probably might speak well of yourself, or you just might be a total nutcase. So I said, well, I'll choose answer D for 500. Thanks, Alex. And just end the game show. So it's to this day still an unexplainable story of how it was just normal. I had no conditions prior to that. It was complete brain function. It was just a normal day. The day before, I'd worked out, ate a healthy grilled chicken, rice, vegetables type of meal. It wasn't poisonous. I felt great the next morning waking up. But then there was the process of the healing that finally broke me free spiritually. So it was a visit because of the travel restrictions. I couldn't go to Australia, but somebody referred me to someone in Australia and walked me through, and we had more of that outer body session. And she had warned me. She said, this is not witchcraft. This is not any kind of voodoo. We're not trying to cast a spell. I just want to address something in your spirit or your soul, something deeper than your spirit that we must address right now if you want to heal quickly and move on. And that's my theme, is to move on. And so we went through, and it took an hour 46 minutes. Oddly 46. I don't know what significance that number would be, but that number tends to stick in my mind because that's how long it took. Because she said you can record the conversation, just don't share it because it might be too sensitive or too powerful for anybody to receive. Just as I was taught growing up, well, you can't see God, you can't see heaven in flesh form, because if you do, you're going to be blinded by it. You just can't see it. It's just a big bright light you can't see. And so she had walked me through it, and we were able to solve the issue as to what caused at least 7 of the near-death experiences, because all 7 of them that I could recall, there's some others I probably didn't recall, all came on one side of my body. And she addressed the issue, and we were able to come to forgiveness, come to lay it to rest finally, to lay it rest in peace finally, to have its proper funeral service in a sense, to let that part go, but to be able to address it before it was time to move on. So that's in a nutshell what happened in those 6 hours on the afternoon of the 17th of February 2021.
Wow. That is hard to, I guess, take in, but it's so cool to hear how God was with you like through that entire moment. How do you respond to people that either think that you're making this story up or maybe don't believe the story? Because I'm sure this has happened to you. I mean, there's no way that you've told the story and everybody's like, yep, checks out.
So it's still a struggle today, because if we think in terms of spreading the gospel, spreading the message, spreading of a being that doesn't physically exist, it makes you look the other way and think that's the explanation. It's another level, but I chose to accept that I didn't have to get the approval and let really a lot of people accept the story. Because the ones that didn't accept the story probably didn't accept that there's an eternal being that wasn't in, or the eternal being that came in flesh form, that lived a sinless life. Because we're dealing with that right now. So the ones that accepted the story, my own family still don't accept the story. And I'm laughing at it because I said, okay, you guys don't accept the supernatural, huh? You might want to watch a show like Black Mirror. Don't watch that show. I said, okay, so you believe in something you don't see, huh?
Yeah.
Well, we can't believe it was you. We thought you just were out for a couple hours. I said, well, an obituary was almost written. I was 1 hour short. I think it was like 7 hours for the Mount Pleasant Post or whatever, the Gazette or something, to write an obituary. I wanted that so I could show it. But I didn't have to get the approval of anybody, because I know my journey with God. I know that the Lord Jesus is my center and that the Holy Spirit continues to teach and lead me. I just hope other people can just accept a fraction, just a little bit of the story, to say, you know what, I can trust something I don't see, because I already do anyways. It's called fear. I want to accept something called faith, and that's all it is.
Yeah, that's amazing. As I've kind of heard your story and heard who you are, the thing that pops in my head is the importance to you of sharing your story and other people sharing their story. Can you talk to me on why it's important to share your own story?
Because nobody lives the same way. Everybody has, because especially if you're a believer and you refer to the Bible as the Word, and the Word is the way, the truth, and the light, and if somebody from the surface, at surface level, wanted to know what is the Bible about, and I say it's a compilation of stories of people that should never have been given a chance. They didn't deserve it because they were the most screwed up people. And that's why I give hope, want to give the hope and the encouragement, because I was one of those that drifted. I mean, I've screwed up as bad as David, King David. He did some rad stuff, and then Jonah running away from God and all these things. But we did some version of that. And so everybody has screwed up. It's called being a human. We're not perfect. We're sinners by birth. We have to come to grace, meaning we have to come to that. And so and even those that have not come to faith yet, I want to hear that story, because perhaps we might be that catalyst in that intersection or that intervention that leads that person not exactly to the house of the Lord, but down the correct road to say, you know what, this is actually a safe road to go. And I'm being embraced by the warm arms of something I don't even know that even exists, but I'll trust it one more step at a time. So I believe everybody's got a level of a story that somebody could relate to. Again, my story may not relate to many people, but it relates to someone. Mm-hmm. That's all I care about. So that's become very important as to why you want to share your story to as many people as possible.
Yeah, and that's huge. And I think some people maybe are afraid of their story, to tell their story, because they're like, well, nobody's going to relate to me, or this is not going to help anybody. But even if you do not see the direct impact of you helping somebody, you could, like you said, be the catalyst to starting something. You could be the one that plants a seed of faith in someone's mind. As you have dove deeper into the Bible and like solidified your faith, what are some verses or some stories that really appeal to your life, and then something that you really feel like is important to share with others?
So I can kind of say that well, I'm actually going to say, because I was given the name Joseph, and I still am one of those crazy dreamers, and so the dreamer cometh. But I didn't have 7 brothers that threw me into a pit and then sold me into slavery or anything, but I did sense that I was sold into that current modern form of that slavery, which is to live the way that everybody else wants you to live. And I wasn't built for that. And so one of the verses, well, actually, it's ironic because I had to look this up and came to James 2:17, because 2:17 was the date in the month of when my accident happened. Faith without works is dead. That was the trigger point to really start doing the work of the Lord. But then I had to write these down, but a simple one, Jeremiah 29:11, for I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you, not to harm you, plans to give you hope in the future. I read that, sang that in school, and not even Sunday school. I just sang it, and it's like, okay, you're a crazy guy. But to know that there were plans, no matter what happened, if I was given a second chance, you still have plans for me. You still loved me. And then there was one, so about moving on, Isaiah 43:18 through 19 kept showing up, because I said, there's got to be one more verse. Forget the former things, do not dwell on the past. See, I am doing a new thing now that it springs up. Do you not perceive it? I am making a way in the wilderness and streams in the wasteland. So I was living through the wasteland. I didn't even know I needed a new way. I thought I kept finding new ways. But that was the encouragement, because some of us might be living in that wasteland right now, and if the Lord declares I'm doing a new thing, well, why can't we do a new thing? Because we are new creatures after we accept Christ as our Savior, that our old self, our fleshly self, has died, and now we're reborn again. Well, reborn doesn't mean you stay as a baby and you drink on milk all day. You have to actually grow up, and you have to pursue the purpose that the Lord has given you. So those are some of the verses that have resonated to me.
Yeah, I love that. And to kind of wrap up our interview, because it's gone so fast and
I know.
I've enjoyed so much of it, I just want to talk about your merch that you have on, because you have a hat that says semicolon, your shirt that says semicolon. So what is that all about, and how does that pertain to your testimony?
So, Evie, when I was going through my recovery process, I was on my one wheel because I had to get on the other side of the fear. I said, there's got to be a mark, because usually Nike has a mark. I mean, it was more on the branding side. Like, okay, what's a mark that I can use? And the semicolon mark came up, because semicolon is where you have two phrases that could be complete sentences on their own, but that if you had an interruption, it doesn't have to be a near-death experience. It could be just a change, maybe a relationship change or a job change or some kind of life change. You have that other part, the second wind. And so the semicolon was the brief pause, whether it's the recovery, whether it's to get back to the Lord, whether it's to meditate or go in the wilderness or whatever you need to reset, but not to forget the memories that you have created. That it's been incredible. So the semicolon became the mark, because I know that it's not over yet. The story's yet to be written. I can let go of what I've had, because if I let go of something to people that is of value, I would call it a legacy. So giving away to somebody that's a value, it's a legacy. If I let go to someone that is negative, they call that a curse. Hold on to something in the past that didn't honor the semicolon mark, it was called a grudge. And if I gave it to somebody, but if I was holding on to it of the past, that still didn't honor the semicolon, became a period, and it ended because now it's an expired potential. So semicolon became the mark, and people tend to love it, and because they would show their tattoos, they had the mark because they all had a story to tell.
That's so good. As my final question of this conversation, what is some advice that you would give to the younger generation, just in general? What's your best piece of advice that you could give to middle school, high schoolers?
Is to let go, open your hands as fast as you can. Move on. Let it go as fast as you can. And deal with the emotions a little bit later. Don't let the emotions lead you. They're great indicators to tell you what's going on, what's happening. But don't let it dictate your direction, because it's so frantic. It's like a sanguine personality. They're all about partying and not about purpose. It's the other P. So once again, let it go as fast as possible, because you can receive with open hands, not with a clenched fist.
Yeah. Gosh. Well, thank you so much for being on today. Thank you for telling your story and encouraging us to tell our own, because that is so important. Because, I mean, telling our story is the one thing I feel like we have, right?
Yes.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you guys so much for listening. I hope you guys enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. I will see you back next week or next time on our next episode. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Bye, guys.